All right, coming back to social justice and the gospel. Church planting, helping them physically and helping them spiritually. What is our role? So the question that I think we always want to ask ourselves is, who is our neighbor? You remember the story of the Good Samaritan, and Jesus went through this entire story, and at the end he said to the man that had questioned him about mercy and love and, who is your neighbor? Who was the neighbor to the person? And at that time it was a lawyer. The lawyer responded to Jesus and said, the one who showed him mercy proved to be his neighbor. So that's the question we have to ask ourselves. Who is my neighbor? And so in the photo that I have on the screen at the moment is more of a person that's homeless in America. You see the gloves and the hot tea. And this is the question I have to ask myself all the time. I see so much need, and there are so many ways that I can get involved. Lord, if I try to do all of it, I might go crazy. But Lord, really, who is my neighbor? Then we take it to a whole nother level. We turn on the news and we see a tragedy, and we see buildings falling down. Let's say in Mexico recently, how many? 200, 300 people died in an earthquake. A lot of those buildings aren't built to move. In America, we build our buildings out of steel and wood so that they will move in an earthquake. Our high-rise buildings in downtown Los Angeles are actually on massive rollers. And you might not realize it, but our entire buildings can shift, and the electricity and the water, and none of that will break because we created them for an earthquake safety zone. But in Mexico, they don't build that way. They build them out of cement. All you have to do with cement is move it a little bit, and it fractures and it falls, and people are crushed. So that was just a recent tragedy. What about this flood, or that hurricane, or this tsunami, or this war zone? Lord, who is my neighbor? This is a question we have to ask ourselves. With mass media and the ability to travel, who is our neighbor? In the midst of this, we can't do everything, but we must constantly say, Lord, right now, do you want me to do something for that person? Do you want me to help this person or that person? This is something we have to do in what I'm going to say, and this is a number I don't want you to ever forget, in the tens of millions. Not just one person, not just 10 people, but tens of millions. Who is my neighbor? And so Jesus said very clearly in Matthew chapter 7, verse 12, Jesus gave us the golden rule. And this is the term that we put on it in American history and American politics. We call it the golden rule. We say that it's golden because it's the most important and the most valuable rule that man has ever had. Right from the lips of Jesus, Matthew chapter 7, verse 12, Jesus says, therefore, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets, or this is a fulfillment of the law and the prophets. So no longer is this love your neighbor as yourself. This is, if you want somebody to do it to you, do it to them before they do it to you. In a sense, this is a proactive social gospel. This is, I would like someone to care for me, to call me, to encourage me, to invite me, to spend time with me, whatever it is. And these are all just, relational things, because in America it's rarely financial because people are independently wealthy. I want somebody to do this. Jesus says, before you say, Lord, it's not fair, they didn't do that for me, just go do it for them. If you want them to call you, call them. If you want them to reach out to you, reach out to them. If you want them to be friendly, become friendly. And so Jesus is saying, be proactive. In a sense, live out the gospel in your life and let that spill over to others. Brian, are there times in your church in Uganda where you see a need before people even come to you, and you say, if I was that person, if I was in that scenario, this is what I would want? Give us an idea of what that looks like from an African pastoral perspective.
Yeah.
To fill a need before they even come to you.
Yeah. Like one of the things I can talk about, when our church got established, we will have the children also began to come. So the children ministry was developing, growing. And then I realized that some of these children, they come to church on Sunday mornings, And some of them come hungry. And of course, we'll have the church service, we'll teach them in Sunday school, but by the time we send them home, they're hungry, and you can see that on their faces. And so I looked into the situation. I'm like, well, we need to do something about it. Yes, they come to church. Yes, we teach them about Jesus, but at least we need to give them something to eat. You know. So, and then I was able to call the people here, share the need, what we have that we, and actually it was growing. Many kids were coming. Right now we are in between 70 to 100 kids every Sunday. And so I was able to talk to the people here, the church here, Saving Grace, and people prayed and people gave towards at least the children will come in Sunday mornings. We have a church service. Then after church, I will get something to eat and something to drink, and then we can send them home. But they didn't ask. But I could see because I have children, and I've been hungry. I know how that looks like. Okay, we won't give a big meal, but at least we can offer something.
And so what does that look like, this meal?
It is will look like maybe 2 samosas, those triangle samosas.
Okay.
Like 2 pieces each kid, and a cup of tea.
Okay, so he's talking about a small piece of bread.
Yes.
Let's say in American, it would be one, we would call it like a biscuit, like you would get in the morning, like biscuits and gravy, just a single bread biscuit and a small cup of tea.
Yes.
So you're not talking about providing this massive meal, you call the caterer,
No.
you set up the stuff, you have like all the silverware.
No, at least something.
What does it cost per child to feed them this piece of bread and this tea?
I would say maybe $1 each.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe $1 each kid. But then it's not only the kids, even the people in the church. So we have about maybe 70 kids. We have about maybe 70, 80 adults within the church. We all eat together. Mm-hmm. So, we're looking between 160 to 180 people every Sunday that we share something to eat. Because the lifestyle they're poor. It's a poor community, but we all the children and all from the church we get to share something.
Right.
Yeah. So I was compelled to see that, and I didn't need to ask many questions. I just knew that we would trust the Lord, we will share the need, and see what God does. And the Lord provided. The churches over here prayed and sent us, money to be able to fill those needs.
So that's a physical need.
Yes.
And you talked about going into the market.
Yes.
Because you knew they had a spiritual need.
Yes.
And they didn't say, Brian, come and pastor us. But you saw it. You went there.
Yes.
Even if with a little fear, maybe you knew it was going to be a risk.
Yes.
And so in another way, you first met their spiritual need.
Yes, spiritual
and
need
then when you realized that they had a physical need as well, you could meet that.
Yes.
So it was the two hand in hand.
The two hand in hand.
Okay.
So we focus on the spiritual first, but then, and it's going well, and then we saw there is also physical, that it is open, it is evident, you can't deny it. No one asked, but we could sense it.
Right.
And it was time to take a step.
Right.
By faith.
Yeah. In South Sudan, Brian works in Uganda, I work in the neighboring country of South Sudan, and we have 200 and 250 kids in our program. Most of the kids in our program would not eat unless we gave them lunch. So part of our child sponsorship was giving them school, of course giving them a uniform, providing medical care for them, providing of course spiritual care, bringing a church to them for the first time, giving them education where they would never receive any. But in the midst of it all, if we don't feed them one meal, a lot of them would starve. And so the parents have come to us and said, no matter how bad the war gets, if you shut down this school, our kids will die. Our kids will die. Yeah. Now, we don't feed them big meals. We feed them porridge, which is kind of like cream of wheat or oatmeal. One bowl of a simple, hot, liquidy cream of wheat oatmeal is what these kids get. And they get a cup of tea, because you guys all know that tea goes a long ways. You can take 2 or 3 tea bags, boil them in a big pot, and make tea for 100 kids. So it's not that much money, but we do it because it's necessary. We do it because we know what it feels like to be on the other side. And so before they even ask us, we move into their countries, we move into their communities, and we provide that for them. I think of the other thing that we don't often think about is adoption and caring for children. When Brian adopted his 3 children, but especially his first one, it was, I see a need in a child's life. And of course you wanted to be a parent, that's a given. But you could have done anything you wanted to. You said, I see a need in that child's life, and no matter what it takes, if I was that child, what's the one thing I would want? Someone to come into this orphanage and bring me home and make me their own. And praise the Lord that even your parents, which resisted that, now think of those children as their own.
Yeah, 3 of them.
Yeah.
Their love on them.
So this is what it means to say, who is my neighbor? My neighbor is the person that has a need that I can fulfill. And before they even ask me, I go to them. And now the beautiful thing about America is this is ingrained into our politics. It's ingrained into our culture. As a nation, this is a political statement, as a nation we give, I think, 3/4 of all donations to the UN. That's hundreds of billions of dollars a year to feed people. For example, in South Sudan alone, which is only one of 54 African nations and one of 10 African nations that's imploding without American relief food, hundreds of millions of people would be dead today if the US government didn't say, or because they said we're going to feed them, they're alive. And we don't have to. Like, why in America do we feel obligated as a government to take our tax money and feed people halfway around the world? Because this rule from Jesus Christ has been not only put into our hearts, it's been put into our entire fabric of our society. This is who we are because Jesus made this statement. It's the golden rule. Do unto somebody else in the same way that you want them to do to you. Be proactive. And then is the story of the Good Samaritan. And we all know this story. This is from Luke chapter 10, verses 30 through 37. Let me summarize the story for you. Jesus is talking about loving people, loving God with all your heart, loving your neighbors yourself. The lawyer says to him, well, who is my neighbor? Jesus speaks of a Jewish man that's walking down the road that gets attacked by thieves, beaten almost to death. And when you're beaten almost to death, you cannot help yourself. And this is the way that Jesus portrayed this story. There was a man that was going about his business. He was so severely attacked, if that be an economic attack, if that be a physical attack, as this story plays it out, if that be spiritual attack, he was at a point where if we would have just passed him by, he would have died within a few hours or maybe a few days. And so Jesus plays out the story and says, one religious leader passes him on this side. The other religious leader passes him on that side. And then somebody comes along that would seem to be his tribal, not friend, but a tribal enemy. And he says, even though that man's from another tribe and they despise us and we despise them, and we normally don't even talk to each other, he's going to die. I need to stop and help this man. And as that Samaritan went down on his hands and knees and took care of this man that was bleeding profusely. If you've ever found somebody on the street in a car accident, in some kind of a tragedy, and you see that much blood by itself puts you into shock. In America, what do? We say, don't worry, and we touch them somewhere where they're not bleeding. And we say, we're calling the ambulance, don't worry, I won't leave you. And that's an admirable thing to do. But in this situation, that's not what the Samaritan did. The Samaritan went down on his hands and knees. He took whatever he had. He ripped off pieces of his clothing. He took wine and oil from his own food source. And he ministered to this man, and he cleaned his wounds. And then he picked the man up with his own strength and put the man on his horse. When you try to move somebody that's been that beaten, their blood covers you. So here this man is, a wealthy businessman going about his journey. He finds this man, he does everything he can for him, he puts him on his horse, and he walks him to an inn, gets him into the bed, takes care of him, reaches into his own pocket and says to the innkeeper, I don't know this man, I don't know his name, I don't know anything about him. Maybe he couldn't speak, maybe there was no way for him to communicate. Whatever this man needs, give it to him. Here's money for him. The Samaritan went the extra 100 miles, not the extra mile, the extra 100 miles for that man. Then Jesus said, after he finished that story, to the lawyer that was wanting to justify himself, who was that man's neighbor? And the lawyer said, being totally carnal, totally selfish, couldn't deny the story, the one that showed him mercy was his neighbor. And what did Jesus say to that lawyer? You go and do exactly as he did. So this is why social justice is so much a part of the church. I can't say I have the heart of God unless I'm willing to give up everything for someone, and this is the key point, that cannot help themselves. Finding people that cannot help themselves. Going to people that need our assistance. Seeing that need and doing it before they even ask, just saying that has to be done. This is the heart of God. All right, Brian, talk to us a little bit about what it's like to enter into a slum, to be a part of a slum. In this photo of this young boy in this slum, a colleague of mine that I was with took this photo, and we asked this boy, what are you doing with this little tin can and this pile of trash and this little stick? And the little boy said, I'm making trash soup. And my colleague and I, we'd lived with refugees. We had seen devastation. And when we were inside of this slum, this is in Nairobi, Kenya, one of the biggest slums in the world. We were inside of this slum, deep into these streets that go on forever. And we saw this boy. And the photo, I can't even show you how big the piles of trash are. We saw this boy and we realized this child's only option to have fun in this slum is to make trash soup. He's just a child. He wants to play. He wants to do something. And this is the only option that he has. Brian, talk to us about what it's like to enter into a slum and to see people that are living like this. As a pastor, you know, I only have this much money. Maybe I only have this many moments that I can be in this place or that place. What are some of the struggles that you guys have? Having the love of God in your hearts, having limited supplies, and seeing mass need.
I mean, it is quite moving because you go to places like this and you see how people live, how children live. I mean, he's playing with soup. This boy is playing with soup. He doesn't have toys. And I mean, when you look at the hygiene, you know, they get sick from things like this. But at the same time, realizing that at times you just have to pray because even with limited resources, you can do what you do, but I mean, you can't do everything. And sometimes you feel like things are out of control, but God is in control. It is moving, it is heartbreaking, but you know, you do what you do, and the rest, you will leave it to God.
Now, for an American coming into a situation like this is overwhelming for us. I mean, just to see this photo is overwhelming for us.
Yeah.
As I'm walking through this pile of rubbish, we would say in Uganda, trash in America, as I'm walking through this pile of rubbish, I get through all of the waste of the paper and plastic, and then as I turn this corner, I realize there's no bathrooms.
Yes.
And I see human waste just going down these little channels between these houses.
Yes.
And I see these little kids running through them.
Yes.
And then I see it all collect at the very bottom of this valley.
Yes.
And then it rains, and then there's more trash and more human waste, and then it floods, and then people's houses are filled with it. The smell.
Yes.
The whole thing is so overwhelming.
Yes.
Part of me says, I want to do everything.
Yes.
Another part of me says I want to do nothing because I'm too broken by this need.
Yes.
What do you do first? Let's say you had a budget. Let's say you had finances, and somebody, you know, outside of this says, Brian, your church is right on the edge of one of these. Here's $5,000. What would you do first to help these people, knowing that when you enter their house, It's going to be a mud floor.
Yeah.
There's going to be all kinds of smells and diseases all around you.
Yeah.
They might have a little foam mattress that's wearing out.
Yes.
There's going to be bugs and fleas and ants and cockroaches and all of that stuff. What do you do first? Because there's so much need.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is you get into the people as a local, you speak the language, you go in and teach them about hygiene, how to, it's a slum, but also there can be some measures to be done to maybe dig, like let's say human waste is all over the place. I have $5,000 because I know that's the root of like all the diseases. Maybe finding ways to put in pit latrines where people can go, because in areas like this, they don't have like toilets. They just go anyhow. So it's fumes. So at least make sure that they have latrines. They, teach them how to wash their hands, to give them measures of how to clean up the environment.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, basically going to the like in a situation like this, they need toilets, they need bathrooms.
Now, but there's no plumbing, right? So you can't, like when you say toilet, we're thinking of an actual physical toilet with running water and that ability.
No. This is when you dig a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
And you put logs on it, and you just squat on it, and it's done. So at least these are underground pit latrines.
Now, we're looking at a photo of Kibera, slum in Nairobi.
Yeah.
1 million people live in Kibera.
Yeah.
And that's not the people that live in the next two largest slums that are across the train tracks and across the road.
Yeah.
Those are separate slums. This is just the biggest one
Yeah.
of 5 or 6 in the country.
Yeah.
There's one person in that slum, and God's given me a heart for that person.
Yeah.
What do I do? Do I rush in there and buy that person all new stuff and fill up their house with brand new things? I mean, just because the feeling, right? The sense of urgency, and there's that woman, and she's wonderful, and she loves God, and I just want to help her. I can't help the other million, but I want to help her. How do I do that practically? Tell us about all the mistakes that Americans make when they come over.
Yeah, because
and remember, you can speak freely with us. Tell us.
Because once you come in, you want to do everything. Mm-hmm. But then realize, even if you run to that one woman and you do all the stuff you do, now she even becomes a target. That the other people will come, grab the stuff, they can even kill her for the stuff she has in this kind of environment. So
if we buy her nice things,
if you buy nice things,
she will get beat up for it.
At night, she might not survive because the need is so great. There is this one person that has what it takes to live. They'll come for it. She might not make it in the night.
Does she have a real door on her house?
No.
No locks?
No locks.
No security?
No security.
They could just kick through her wall
just kick
in
through
2 seconds
and grab her.
Whatever.
These are shacks. These are tin shacks.
Yeah.
You just knock it and you're inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
a lot of these are made of mud.
Yes.
And I couldn't lean against the wall.
Yeah.
Or it would have collapsed on me.
So this is, that's not even a safe measure to... So if you want to come and help, there has to be wisely done, maybe through the
so
locals.
let's say I'm an American, and I get a vision in America.
Yeah.
I see a picture like this. Maybe I visit Kenya or Kampala or Nairobi, whatever, and I see it. I come back to America and I say to my big, wealthy American church, we need to raise money, and the church gets together and gives me $50,000 US, right?
Yeah.
How do I go about, as a Mzungu, as a white man, how do I go about determining what's needed? And you've already given us one idea, sanitation.
Yeah.
How do I actually bring that sanitation to those people? Do I go and dig the holes myself?
No.
Right? Do I build beautiful bathrooms with running water and flushing toilets and mirrors and maybe a blow dryer?
Yeah, Mzungu can't do that. They'll come in and begin to set stuff up.
You follow what he's saying? Yeah. We get these ideas and we want to make little Americas in these places.
Yes, yeah. So Mzungu comes here just to make it like America, but it's a different ground that has to have a different approach to be able to meet the need. Because even though you stole it that night, they'll be stolen, they will be taken.
Right.
Because the way how people are living, they are scrambling for survival. And so the kind of environment is not permitting that kind of approach.
So do I dig those pit latrines myself? Do I hire people?
Yes.
Do I go down to the corner with all your friends in the market and pull out $100 bills?
No.
And say, look, I've got money. Would you work for me?
No.
Right? Do I buy them shovels? Do I provide them tools? I mean, practically.
Yes.
Like, let's say I really want to help these people. You see, our biggest struggle, as you know, you've been with us so long.
Yeah.
Our biggest struggle is we have the money.
Yeah.
How do we actually make a difference with it?
Yes. So basically, let's say if we go to work on the latrines, pit latrines, we'll go to the market, buy the hose,
Shovels, hose.
the shovels, and then we'll say, okay, we need pit latrines for the people. How many do we need? And then we begin to work that way. So if we do maybe 2 in a day, maybe in a month we can have 10 or 20. So you're already making a difference,
And these are for everybody.
for everybody.
Okay, so that's what we're getting to is I can't just help that lady
only
or that family or
Yes.
that pastor.
Exactly. It's
I have to help the people.
the people. Because
Okay.
this is more like, it's like a big group of people. Excuse me. That you can't only target one person, because once you target one person, then you've ruined that person's life. They'll begin to say, that's the only family that the Mzungu is coming. So at night they will come and say, no, we need the dollars. Mzungu gave you dollars. So you already created a problem with that individual. So if you do communal, okay, it's bathrooms, let's put in how many do we need? Maybe we need 20 or 30. And we begin to work towards that communal need. And even the people themselves will also come and participate.
Right.
To make a difference, because now this is our bathrooms. Yeah, we need to work together.
Now, if I came as a white foreigner and I said, will you volunteer? Would they normally volunteer compared to me working with somebody like you that's a local?
Yeah.
When you go and say they volunteer, that's a different sense of volunteering.
Yes.
They might say yes to me,
Yes.
but that means they expect me to pay them.
Exactly.
But if they say yes to you, they know you're not going to pay
They
them.
know I'm not going. They no money. No money. But
So I
if
can
he
say no
said-
money all I want.
Yeah.
But when he says it, they believe it.
Yeah. Because they know no money. But this one, he has to do something.
I have to.
He
It's
has
an
to do something.
obligation.
It's obligation.
It's a skin color
Exactly.
thing.
You cannot. Mzungu, you have dollars. Mzungu,
And you're
yes,
gonna pay.
We know you can do something. And even if when the work is done, they will say, give us something.
Yeah.
But to me, they know.
Now you'll feed them.
Yeah.
You'll provide the supplies, the
Yes.
tools.
Yes.
But they know it's for them. So
Yes.
when I use our resources through a national,
Yes.
then the job gets done
The job
in a way that's sustainable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So and they realize this is for our good, and they all join hands to that cause, and that can make a difference.
Yeah.
It's a good approach than to just sing out individuals, or if you come and do it a different style, and sometimes, you can set it nice, but it's stolen, it's broken.
Yeah.
But if we do it the way it fits, it makes a difference.
So nationals are the key.
Yes.
Go slow,
Go slow.
take time.
Take time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't make a decision based on what you felt God leading you to in an American prayer meeting. This is essential. We get these great ideas in prayer and we all agree. Why? Because we all think the same. So let's say we're around this table for 3 hours and we're praying about this slum in Nairobi, and I show you one photo, I tell you a bunch of stories, and we all pray, we all agree. But there's no national in the prayer meeting to tell us, well, that's a great idea, but it won't work that way. Let me give you an example. we were ministering to, I don't know, 500 or 600 kids in the refugee camp, and Brian's wife, an American missionary, was overseeing this school project. And a ministry in America had this great idea to fill up a shipping container full of backpacks for the kids that we had in our ministry. And so this church, I think it was in Arizona, maybe 2 or 3 churches, they all got together and they filled this shipping container with like 500 backpacks. Every backpack, and these were nice backpacks. They weren't those cheesy Chinese ones. These were like JanSport backpacks. All of them had crayons and pencils and kinds of paper, a calculator, a ruler. You guys all follow me, right? The erasers, the whole thing. It was a whole kit for these kids. I mean, beautiful. And they were the best. And these people in America said, we only want to give the best to the kids that we're going to give to. So they were good-hearted about it. So this took like 6 months for the permitting to happen and the shipping container to be loaded. And I got photos of these people in Arizona loading this. I mean, there's like 400 people out there that were in matching shirts and they're all excited and like, praise the Lord, we're going to do this. They do this thing, they ship the container. Now the container gets to Africa. I got to leave Uganda and go to the neighboring country of Kenya and wait for like a week or 2 weeks at the port to work with this bribe and that person and this and that. I got $10,000 in my bag just to get this thing cleared from customs and get it on a truck and get it hauled from the country it entered to the country we're working. It was huge, a logistic deal, huge. But the church in America really wanted to bless the South Sudanese refugees that we worked with. So we, being young missionaries, we thought, oh, this is cool, right? We had no idea this was going to turn out to be a total tragedy. All this time, all this money is spent. We get the shipping container, we get it offloaded, we bring all the kids from our program, not the parents, nobody else, just the kids. Now our kids were 1st grade to like 6th grade, so these are all young kids. And we get photos, and we're all excited about giving every kid a backpack. So now 500 kids are walking down a refugee camp road with these brand new backpacks on. A lot of the little ones, before they made it home, got attacked and beat up on the road. One little kid came back and he was bleeding from his head. And he said, as I left your driveway, which is where the shipping container was, I left this little dirt driveway and went under the dirt path. And as I was going back to my house with the first thing I'd ever owned in my life of this value, I was so excited and I felt rocks coming from over the hill, and the kids that weren't part of the program, that were jealous, they stoned me. This kid almost died, okay? The kids that did make it home, the older kids, let's say 6th, 7th grade or whatever they were, 12, 13 years old, they made it home, and their dad said, how dare you think that that's yours? We're a family, and the dads are normally alcoholics. They don't work at all. They took the backpacks and everything in them, took them to the market, and sold them out one by one to buy more alcohol. The next day, no kids, no backpacks, no pencils, no pens. It was gone. Every bit of it was gone. And a bunch of our kids were injured. And we realized we get these great ideas in America, and everybody's on board, and you can have 400 people loading a container. $50,000 went into this project. The day it all came about in Africa, it was a tragedy, total tragedy. Instead, what we would say, send that $50,000 to somebody, an American missionary if he's there, that's working with a group of nationals. Let them pray about what to do, how to do, when to do, and then slowly let that play out. And we could have changed that refugee camp with $50,000, and nobody would have been injured, and everybody would have been blessed. You had a question?
Yeah. How do you think, like, Samaritan's Purse with like the Christmas boxes? How does that play out?
It depends on the location. So the story I just told you was the poorest place on the planet, where nobody had anything. Samaritan's Purse, if they're wise, and I can't say this about all their projects, but I did work with some of their directors in different countries, they would pick places where people had a little bit. So to give them a shoebox with a little bit more wasn't a massive deal. So they're not going into slums with shoeboxes or going into refugee camps. They're working with kids that already have clothes and already have food, and they give them a little bit extra. And so World Vision, Compassion, all of the World Vision and Compassion people that I worked with all worked in cities where people had something, because they realized that they went too remote, they can't do it. They've got to do it where somebody has a little bit. Where Brian and I are talking about going into the most remote places on the planet. So you've got to switch up how you do your relief depending upon where the people are starting with the level of relief. So it could be a tragedy and we would never hear about it, or it could be great. I don't know. But I have seen some real bad Voice of the Martyrs. One time sent out a guy, no, I like Voice of the Martyrs, got nothing against them. They sent out a rookie Mzungu white missionary to South Sudan. They gave him $50,000 a month and said those people in that town, they need medicine because they're dying. So this American guy shows up, no cultural training, no concept of what's going on, gets with the local government and says, I got this much money, which was his first mistake, and this is what I'm going to do with it. And we're going to build a medical clinic, and this is the way it's going to go. So he says, tomorrow I'm going to start doing interviews with people. And so bring anybody to me that has medical experience. Nobody had medical experience. Maybe one or two people. So what does the governor do? He gets a hold of all of the other governor officials, and he says, bring all of your relatives to this place. And then they told that guy, you have to hire all of my relatives. So you got the mayor and the city council member and the so-and-so. And then he said to the guy, the American, if you want to work here in this town that God's called you to, you have to hire these people. These people can't even read and write. They know nothing about it. So after about 3 or 4 months of this and $50,000 a month being poured into this, vehicles and all this stuff, and the airplanes are landing with supplies, this is insanity. After all of this, finally, the voice of the Martyrs guy got so angry that he started yelling at the people. Well, you never do that culturally. You never do it. So they arrested him. And they said, you give us all your money or you'll never leave this place. So a guy from our ministry, which now has passed away because of other circumstances, he got in the armored vehicle that was created for this ministry that we were part of. You guys all met Wes Bentley. So this is one of Wes Bentley's American missionaries, gets in Wes Bentley's armored vehicle and literally rushes the place, breaks the gate open, gets into the area, gets the American out, puts him in the car, gets him to the airstrip while in Missions Aviation Fellowship it may have, lands a plane, we get the white guy on the plane, get him to the neighboring country where I'm living with Brian's wife, we were colleagues. We get down there to the airport, we get him out of the airport and back to the city, and we're like, what happened? He's like, those people are so confused, I don't know what's wrong with them. I went there to help them and they just couldn't figure it out. And Jill and I are looking at each other like, this guy's going to get us all killed. We take him to the bank in Kampala because he's got to cash out all of the money before he leaves the country. And remember, the Sudanese government's still looking for him. So Wes told me, Rob, you got 24 hours from the time he gets to Uganda, the neighboring country, to get him to the bank, to get him on a plane, and to get him out of the country, or we're all going to get arrested. So you got to get him out of here. So we get to the bank. He comes out of the bank in Kampala, downtown Kampala, with over $20,000 in brick cash under his shoulder like this. Now he had a bag around it, but any white guy walking out of the bank that walked in empty and now has this thing under his arm, okay? And I'm in the car with Dave Zavala, our pastor in Nairobi. I'm like, Dave, where's he going? He goes, Rob, he's staying at our house. I'm like, we're all going to die. Well, there's no way we're going to survive tonight. We're going to die. So I literally drove him all these other places, right? Knowing that we could get robbed, but at least we weren't going to get robbed at our house. And Jill and Immaculate and Ruth that were living at the house, they weren't going to get attacked. So Dave and I are driving him all over the city saying, if we're going to get robbed, hopefully we get robbed now. Somehow we got him home. And remember, the whole time he's angry. He's not listening to us. He's telling us, you just need to walk with God. You need to walk by faith. You got an issue. And we're like, dude, I'm going to shoot you because you're going to get myself killed and all these Americans killed and everybody else around you. We finally got him out of the country. When that guy left, it was like, we can go back to do ministry now. This white guy showed up with all that money to cause all that trouble.
Yeah.
I wasn't even going to tell you those stories. So let's turn back. Brian?
No, that was a good one.
Do you have Americans that come and they see these situations and they want to, let's say, do something immediately?
Yeah.
Do you ever have them come and say, I want to give money, or not even ask you, but let's say that the husband left.
Yeah.
She's already got twins. Yeah. She's now giving birth to 2 more twins. She's got 4 kids. Yeah. She's a woman of God. Yeah. Do they try to give physical cash to people in your church that come and visit, or can you maybe teach them not to do that before they come?
Yeah, so when they come in, we will do a debriefing. If they want to help, they have to let us know. and we can show them how to do it. Because, I mean, they can say they are helping and they give a lot of money, and people, first of all, it just kills the mind of the people in the church. If you get 5 people and they've been given insane money like that, I mean, they're already spoiled, you know. So as soon as they see someone, a white person, that's what they expect, you know, which even can cause rebellion in the church. Because if I come and say, okay, now, you know, this is how much we have, this is how we're going to do it, they cannot listen. They say,
So
no.
you're saying maybe you'll give somebody $1,
Yeah.
but I'm inclined to give them $100.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So already that's it's like they know, no, he can give me $100 or more. I say no, this as a church we can give you $10 or $5. It's like it just doesn't make sense anymore. So their mind is already polluted. But if you come in and say, hey, how can we help? And then we can run you the process. We can hear the needs, and at least we can deal with the needs according to their levels, or even with the income of the people, because
Right.
So that
Because you know that.
I
Well,
know.
I don't understand that.
Yes.
Right. The average income in my country,
Yeah.
it's $45,000 a year.
Yes.
What's the average income in your church, let's say?
So right now, okay, someone who works in the marketplace, I mean, a monthly income will be between maybe $50, $60
Okay.
a month.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's
So
like,
per year,
yeah.
maybe
so,
1,005.
Yes.
Yeah. So
You know,
a
so-
good year is $1,500.
Yes.
Right.
You know, and so when you come in and then you just throw money anyhow, so it's like, oh, of course they will chase the money because they need the money. You know, but at the same time, it's good to meet the needs where people are at,
The practical level.
the practical level.
Right. Right. Any questions for Brian? Have you guys been on short-term trips? Have you seen things like this? Have you had your hearts ripped out and you didn't know what to do, and the first thing you wanted to do was just reach in your pocket and give whatever you have? Here's my watch, here's my shoes. You guys ever been in one of those situations? Am I the only one that's felt like I just want to give?
I've seen it in El Salvador.
Okay.
I was there right after they had had a civil war. And then I've seen it also in San Francisco. I've been on a few short-term trips. One of them I was with a bunch of junior hires, and a couple of them wanted to give their jackets to,
Right.
the homeless people. And the pastor said the same exact thing. Like,
Okay.
these people will get eaten by the city if you try to give them anything.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
So the pastor that was over that homeless ministry gave him the same advice that Brian's giving us.
Yeah.
So this isn't just an African thing.
No.
This is across the board. That was an American pastor working in an American city.
Yeah.
Okay?
There's-
Yeah. Any questions, you guys, for Brian? Go ahead.
How do you strike a balance where people don't get confused and they come to church just to expect a material blessing versus just coming to worship and to fellowship? Is there like any practical advice that you have as far as how do you strike that balance?
I mean, as a pastor of a church, the first thing is just to feed the flock.
Spiritually.
Spiritually. That has to be the first focus. But then, you know, as you shepherd your flock, the Lord will be showing you the needs. Or your flock will come with the needs. And then as a pastor, you can see, okay, we can do that, or we cannot do that right now. So then you make priorities of how to help. Yeah, but always the focus is going to be on the spiritual, and God will be showing you the needs of the people. You know, some you could deal with them right away, and some could be that we have to wait. Some could be let's pray about it, and some could be just waiting on God. But through the process, the Lord shows you what to do.
And what we found is that my sense of shock is so intense that I'm willing to make a decision right now. And we all know that in culture. No snap decisions. I see a need and I want to fix it. Where Brian says, Rob, you don't really see what you think you see. Yes, there's a need, but everybody has a need.
Yeah.
What we know from the local pastors,
Yeah.
that there is a issue going on behind the scenes that has to be dealt with
Yeah.
before that need can be met. And so where I just want to throw money at it,
Yeah.
you say, no, there's maturity here.
Yeah.
We need to move this person from this house to that house so they
Yes.
can actually maintain that.
Right.
There's this alcoholic father, there's
Right.
this abusive husband,
Right.
whatever. And so you see all of that.
Yes.
The problem I have is I'm blind. I'm totally blind most of the time. Even if I live there for 5 years,
Yeah.
I still am
Yeah.
culturally blind
Yeah.
to things. But you know it, you see it.
Yes, because as a local pastor, you know your people. You know what they go through. You know how they're like. Some could just come and they want to get something out of you, but they don't really. It's more like a want. They need that money, but it's not a need.
Now, would they lie to me but not to you?
Oh yeah, of course. Because you're fat.
That's right, I'm fat, yeah.
So they want that. They,
Mzungu, you are looking so fat today.
yeah. You got good juice.
That's
They-
right.
They want the juice.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah. So, some of the things you have to be sensitive of how you're going to minister to them, and once they know that you're structured in the way you do things, they respect it. They respect. They know that you know what has to be done and what's not to be done.
So that's the question. Is it okay for me to say no?
It's okay to say no. I mean, basing if the need is not really
Life-threatening.
life-threatening,
Yeah.
and if they come to you and say, I want some money because so and so and so, but you might not have the story, and you pull out and you give the money. So now the next Sunday, they will come back with the same idea with another story. My so and so died, I need to go and do this and this, I need this much money. So that then you begin to create a culture of some things can be legitimate and some could be manipulation.
Right.
So
So it's okay to say no.
at times it's okay to say no,
Yeah.
and maybe
Can I say it's always okay to say no? Not
It's-
just at times.
Yeah.
You're being gentle.
well, it's okay to say no,
Right.
and then and consult those leaders around
Leaders
you
around you, right,
to
yeah.
help you to assess if this is legit or
Yeah.
it's not. So, but if you don't have that, then it'll be hard for you to really see what to do and what not to do.
So I say no all day long in Africa. People come to me, Rob, we've known each other for all this time, and we're friends, and our families, and all this, and you were there when my child was born, and I was there when your child was born. I mean, it goes on forever. And I just tell them, that's great, and I love you. No. I love you. No. And then I turn to Brian if he's a local leader, or Pastor James Nika, whoever the local leader is, and I say, I talked to so-and-so, and this is the story they told me. And the Africans, all the time, they'll laugh. Oh, yeah, he's got more stories than that. That was just the starting story. So then I know it was good to say no.
Yeah.
Or they'll say, well, I'm really glad that you saw that, because we don't have the money to help that, and that's a legitimate need. That's a woman, she's got kids, her husband left her, somebody died of AIDS, she's got no more family, everybody died in the war.
Yeah.
And so then I'll turn to the pastors and I'll say, here's a little bit.
Yeah.
Use that, and it comes from your hand to them, not from my hand to
Right.
them. And then we watch and see how they manage that. And then if it's a true need, then maybe
Yeah.
we can do that again
Yes.
and again. But it's
Yes.
never my hand to their hand. It's always to the local leadership.
Yes.
That's safety.
Yes, that's safety.
Yeah. Yeah, don't be a Mzungu
Yes. So.
and come rushing in like a hippo and trample everybody.
Yeah.
He knows exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, can you just pray for us, brother?
Yes. Jesus, we thank you for this teaching we have received, Lord, and many things you are showing us how to minister to your people. Lord, of course, we will be men and women that share the gospel, Lord, even to take the obligation of the needs of those who are needy, Lord. Give us that wisdom of how to balance ministry. We thank you for the calling, and we thank you for the opportunities you've allowed us to be part of, Jesus. Bless us, Lord. We love you, and in Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right, let's take a 5-minute break. And if you want to say goodbye to Brian or ask him any questions, he's going to go ahead and head home. And then we're going to be here for another hour and go through what to do, when to do, and how to do it.